At the beginning of the story, two gangsters are seen beating up an acute gambler named Oka. Apart from gambling, he is also an alliance of other gangsters. However, the actions of these two gangsters were stopped by their boss named Park Hee-soo. He is one of the most respected gangsters in the Guam region, as he is very charismatic and his every action is always well thought out. Here, Hee-soo doesn't say much. He just stares at Oka with a cold but fierce gaze. However, it is enough to make Oka scared and finally intend to betray his own alliance named Yonggang. For information, Yonggang is one of the toughest gangster bosses in the city of Busan. However, Oka asked Hee-soo to help him provide for his child. Apart from being respected by enemies, Hee-soo's personality is also liked by local residents because he is not the type of gangster who likes to extort. It is not uncommon for local residents to also ask Hee-soo for help regarding problems in the village. For example, this woman has a problem with the electricity line. After talking with the residents, Hee-soo then went to the hotel owned by his gang. But unexpectedly, the ground floor has been destroyed due to an attack by Yonggang's men. Hee-soo immediately went to his big boss, Mr. Sun. Here Mr. Sun looks upset and panicked. He considers Yonggang's attack as a trigger for a gang war. Seeing his boss panicking, Hee-soo calmed Mr. Sun down so he wouldn't rush into revenge. Instead of revenge, Hee-soo chose to negotiate with Yonggang as a trusted member. Hee-soo's plan was immediately approved by Mr. Sun. Meanwhile, his nephew named Dodori is jealous and spiteful because his uncle trusts Hee-soo more. But what else can say? Hee-soo is indeed suitable to be a real gangster. How not, Hee-soo even dared to enter the Yonggang headquarters by himself. In fact, there are members being tortured by Yonggang, and the situation is not okay. But Hee-soo did not flinch at all when he saw the enemy's men. Hee-soo is then greeted casually by Yonggang, who looks normally, even though his men had just damaged Mr. Sun's hotel. Although his gang is not as big as the others, he has the courage to be applauded. In short, here Hee-soo doesn't want to magnify the problem. All of this was just a misunderstanding where Yonggang attacked his gang because Hee-soo was considered interfering in Oka's problems. After straightening out the attack, Yonggang suddenly talks about the drug business. He also wants to invite Hee-soo to cooperate, where he and Mr. Sun only need to give permission for drug distribution in his area. However, because Hee-soo and his gang have never been in the drug business, as a result he is a little hesitant about the invitation. Hee-soo also asked Mr. Sun for permission to agree with Yonggang's invitation. However, Mr. Sun strictly forbade it. But on the other hand, Hee-soo is also in a dilemma because he needs a lot of money. That is because Hee-soo owes hundreds of millions to a loan shark named Hong. So inevitably, he has to get more money. When Hong collects the debt, he warns Hee-soo not to leave the Mr. Sun gang. If he does, Hong will take his organs as collateral for the debt. All this time, Hong was still reluctant because he respected Hee-soo's position in the gang, even though he was exactly known as a very sadistic loan shark. A few days later, Hee-soo visits one of the gangster bosses named Yang Dong, who is quite close to him. It can say that Hee-soo is easy to get along with anyone, so he doesn't have much trouble with other gangs. At Yang Dong's place, Hee-soo only eats while talking with Yang Dong. But in the middle of the conversation, Yang Dong suddenly shifted the topic towards gambling. He says that the slot business is taking off in Korea, and he'll get rich quick if he can dominate the market. Yang Dong tries to get Hee-soo to join him, but Hee-soo immediately refuses because he's still loyal to Mr. Sun. In fact, if to think about it, Mr. Sun is a greedy man, and Hee-soo might not inherit and gave to control his hotel business. Later that night, Hee-soo gets drunk at his favorite tavern. While he's drunk, a man in a suit suddenly sits next to him. It turns out that he is Hee-soo's old friend named Cheol-jin. Just like Hee-soo, Cheol-jin is also a gangster. However, the difference is Cheol-jin is much more successful than Hee-soo. Therefore, he wants to invite Hee-soo to join his gang. Cheol-jin said that Hee-soo is too great, and it's useless if his abilities are only used to take care of Mr. Sun Hotel. But because Hee-soo was already drunk, Cheol-jin's words were not taken seriously. After returning from the tavern, Hisu sneaks into the house of a widow named Insuk, because Hisu doesn't actually have a house to sleep in. Fortunately, Insuk is Hisu's crush, so he doesn't have to be afraid of being raided by residents. Even these two lovers took the time to date while the morning air was cold. The next day, Insuk's biological son, Amai, is released from prison. But actually, Amai is an innocent and kind teenager. He also really admires Hisu, who is already considered like his own father. As an older person, Hisu advised Amai to stay away from the criminal world so as not to be imprisoned again. However, Amai will soon work as a liquor dealer for the Yangdong gang. Hearing that, Hisu can only warn him not to do anything wrong. After advising Amai, Hisu returns to the hotel to work. But strangely, there's Yanggang's men who are acting suspiciously. When he wanted to be kicked out by the officer, he became brutalized and stabbed the officer. Hisu immediately beat Yanggang's men until he unconscious. Because of this incident, Mr. Son began to take Yanggang seriously. He then told Hisu to disrupt his drug business. Without lingering, Hisu also invited Dodori and one of the men go to Oka's house. The goal is because he wants to persuade Oka to open his mouth about where the drugs are stored and also the Yanggang gang's ledger. With the ledger, Hisu can trap and throw Yanggang into prison. After getting this information, Hisu immediately killed Oka very sadistically. This was the first time Hisu showed his brutality. The next day, Hisu put Oka's body in front of Yanggang's base. As a result, the gangster boss is arrested, and all his assets are confiscated by the corrupt police who cooperate with Hisu. According to the police, Yanggang will be imprisoned for 5 years for murder and drug trafficking. Meanwhile, Hisu has also stolen some of Yanggang's drugs. He intends to sell it in order to pay the debt. On the other hand, the top brass of Chiojin's gang is having a meeting and is led directly by their chairman, who is none other than Mr. Nam. It just so happened that he had just heard of the conflict between Mr. Son's gang and Yanggang and intended to seize their territory. However, Mr. Nam did not want to be rash because Mr. Son's gang was also quite strong. From the looks of it, Mr. Nam was the type of leader who was calm but divisive. The next night, Mr. Son's gang held a prayer meeting at Oka's house. In fact, they were the masterminds of his murder. But since no one knows, this is a good opportunity to improve the gang's image. And of course, Isu the killer is also present at this event. What's more surprising is that Loan Shark Hong also comes to the event, but to collect the deceased's debt, not to pray for him. In addition to them, Mr. Nam's gang led by Mr. Nam is also present here. They are still pretending to be nice to Mr. Son, even though they intend to control his territory. It's the same with Chiojin, who behaves well in front of Hisu. But behind it all, Mr. Nam's gang is actually watching Mr. Son and Hisu's movements. Even Chiojin already knew that Hisu was the one who killed Oka and also put Yanggang in prison. Hisu was shocked because he thought everything had been done secretly. Since that night, Hisu is no longer involved in the gang's work. Until finally, Hisu went to Mr. Son to skip class for a while. Without losing respect, Hisu decided to leave Mr. Son's gang. The reason was very simple, where Hisu preferred to manage slot gambling with Yangdong, because the business could make a lot of money. Hearing that, Mr. Son actually really wanted to rub Hisu's face. However, he realized that all this time, Hisu was in need of a lot of money. In the end, he let Hisu out with one condition: if he did a slot business in his area. Then Mr. Son asked for a 10% profit share. After leaving the gang, Hisu moved permanently into Insuk's house. After all, he also intended to marry the widow someday. And to welcome his move, Insuk had made a very nice dinner. In addition, Amai also invited her girlfriend Jenny to join Hisu's welcoming party. While eating, Amai told her about Hisu's greatness, who once beat up his teacher for being badmouthed. Long story short, Hisu is living his new life as a slot gambling boss with Yangdong. Because the business is increasingly successful, the smell of money and profit begins to be smelled by Hong's loan sharks. Moreover, Hisu's debt is still outstanding. But since Isu has become a money ranch, Hong invited him to cooperate. He promised to write off Hisu's remaining debt as long as C could invest in his slot business. As a businessman who is crazy about profit, of course, Hisu immediately agreed to the collaboration. Thanks to the flow of funds from home, the slot gambling business became even more rampant. Hisu's ambition is to collect as much money as possible so that he can retire in peace. Therefore, Hisu and Yangdong began to expand the business area, and sometimes they had to use violence for certain areas. When it comes to fisticuffs, Hisu entrusts Ame as the leader because he is good at fighting and also very brutal. But the name of an illicit business will definitely not last long, so it is with Hisu and Yangdong's business. Their liquor factory was attacked by Mr. Nam's men and caused many casualties, including Ame, who was stabbed in the stomach. Hisu had never bothered Mr. Nam's gang. Seeing his business destroyed, Yangdong did not remain silent, and he would destroy Mr. Nam's business. In the meantime, Hisu doesn't want to take risks. He thinks revenge will only backfire on them. Moreover, Mr. Nam's gang is one of the biggest in the city of Busan. Talking like that, Hisu gets swatted in front of everyone. Yangdong then says that he has to strike back because Mr. Nam's gang has undermined his pride. Yangdong went to Mr. Nam's gambling place and attacked all the enemy's men there. The craziest thing is that Yangdong is desperate to kill the nephew of the top brass of Mr. Nam's gang. Because of Yangdong's rash behavior, in the end, Hisu was also affected, and he had to be the mediator. Hisu also met with Chiol-jin and one of the officials in Mr. Nam's gang. It turns out that the reason Mr. Nam attacked his business was because they started to be disturbed by the slot gambling business. Therefore, Mr. Nam's gang invited Hisu to go war with their gang, and if they didn't want war, then Hisu had to give his slot gambling shares for free. Hisu firmly refused because working with Mr. Nam would not be profitable, so he prefers to go war. In essence, it's better to die than have his business controlled by others. But to be honest, Hisu was a little hesitant to go to war with Mr. Nam's men. Moreover, Chiol-jin was in the gang, and he had been friends with him for 30 years. Even though they were no longer close, Hisu still didn't have the heart to kill his own friend, so he consulted Mr. Sun for some advice. As a former boss, Mr. Sun just wanted to remind him that Mr. Nam was a very cunning person, and it was certain that Chiol-jin was also secretly drifting because of the upbringing of his boss. From Mr. Sun's suggestion, Hisu started to move first. He decided to send assassins to capture Chiol-jin and one of Mr. Nam's men. The two were then brought to the dock to be interrogated directly by Hisu. However, because only Chiol-jin was useful, Mr. Nam's other men were immediately killed and thrown into the sea. Meanwhile, Chiol-jin tried to make Hisu realize that he was only used by Mr. Sun to destroy Mr. Nam. According to Chiol-jin, all this happened because Mr. Nam and Mr. Sun were fighting over territory, while the victims would be him and Hisu. The chairmen were really only thinking about power. Instead, Chiol-jin cares about Hisu and intends to give him the territory if his gang wins. Hisu came to trust Chiol-jin and finally let him go again. However, this Chiol-jin doesn't know how to return a favor. He instead devised an evil plan to hinder Hisu. The plan was to free Yanggang, who was previously imprisoned by Hisu. After being released, Chiol-jin helps Yanggang to reclaim his drug factory by eliminating Mr. Sun's henchmen. Then Yanggang tortured one of Mr. Sun's men. Then cruelly, Yanggang stuffed a sea urchin into Mr. Sun's men's mouth until it bled. The news about Yanggang was finally heard by Hisu. Then the corrupt police who had helped him said that Yanggang had been helped by a very powerful person, who was none other than Chiol-jin. As a result, the police did not want to interfere. Even Yangdong doesn't want to get involved in this war, which means Hisu has no more alliances and he has to solve all his problems alone. Unbeknownst to Hisu, it turns out that Yangdong has been conspiring with Chiol-jin to have the alcohol business assisted by Mr. Nam's side. He has carried out all of Chiol-jin's plans, including the murder he committed when he attacked Mr. Nam's gambling place. None don't know what Chiol-jin's real goal is, but clearly, this gangster is very cunning and likes to betray people. Ame also has to comply with his request, as long as Hisu is called Dad. After all, he will also marry his mother someday. Hisu happily agrees to the request of his adopted son, who will become his stepson. Hisu then goes to visit Yonggang to negotiate. However, he was invited to side with Mr. Nam, and Yonggang has the idea to make Hisu the ruler of Guam, or in other words, Hisu must kill Mr. Sun. According to Yonggang, this was the best way to survive among the rulers. However, Hisu just shut up and left immediately. Hisu then went to Mr. Sun to persuade him to end the war with Mr. Nam. However, the old man already had his own plans. And here Mr. Sun also blamed Hisu for not killing Chiu-jin, even though Chiu-jin was the most dangerous and cunning person among all the gangsters. In essence, Mr. Sun will continue the war until the end. Hisu, who couldn't stop thinking, finally decided to move alone. Before he left, Mr. Sun gave a gift for Hisu and In-suk's wedding. On the other hand, we are shown Jenny dancing in a nightclub. Then she is asked to accompany a man, even though she is not a karaoke guide or a prostitute. And damn it, the jerk forces her to have sex, which makes Jenny slap him immediately. The jerk goes berserk and beats Jenny to a pulp. This then makes Amai angry, especially since his girlfriend is getting bruised and injured. As a man, Ami immediately went to the place of the jerk who had hurt his girlfriend. He no longer even cares that the jerk is Mr. Nam's man. And as it turned out, the jerk was hiding in a gambling place, and when Amai came, he was suddenly stabbed. At the same time, Hisu and his men are looking for Amai. Then, a moment later, he sees his adopted son dying on the side of the road. Hisu hurriedly took him to the hospital, but unfortunately, Amai had already bled out and died on the spot. As a parent, Hisu is devastated by Ami's death. He also doesn't know what to say to In-suk, but it's clear that he will soon find the mastermind of Ami's murder. Later that night, Hisu and one of his men meet again with Mr. Nam's side, represented by Chiu-jin and also his boss. In this meeting, Hisu wants to reconcile Mr. Sun and Mr. Nam's parties so that there is no massive war. While talking, Hisu suddenly gets a call from his men, who have just tortured Ami's murderer. Based on his confession, the mastermind of all this is Chiu-jin. Hearing that, Hisu's expression turned violent and immediately stuck a knife in Chiu-jin's palm. Instantly, it automatically made a bloodbath happen. Unfortunately, Hisu and his men fell after Chiu-jin got reinforcements. Then, Chiu-jin approached his superior and immediately killed him cruelly, and he could finally become Mr. Nam's only confidant. The next morning, Hisu woke up in a bandaged condition. It turns out he was treated by Chiu-jin. This gangster did it on purpose, because he still cares about his friendship. He also apologizes to Hisu for Ami's death. Chiu-jin was forced to kill Amai, because he was only given two choices by Mr. Nam, between killing Hisu or Amai. So he chose Ami so that Hisu could live. Chiu-jin then suggested that Hisu return to Guam to take control of the region. Chiu-jin then found Mr. Sun, who was fishing, to say goodbye, because afterward, he immediately sent his men to stab Mr. Sun. Hisu, on the other hand, is resting at a nearby clinic until his wound recovers, but then he was visited by his men who were suddenly angry. It turns out that Hisu has been accused of conspiring with Chiu-jin in an assassination attempt on Mr. Sun. Therefore, there are many of Mr. Sun's men who are now targeting Hisu. Apart from being considered a traitor, Hisu was also left behind by In-suk. The widow was disappointed with Hisu for not being able to take good care of Amai. Hisu, who was full of anger, finally decided to act irresponsibly. He went to visit Mr. Sun, who was dying from a stab by Mr. Nam's men, and without thinking, Hisu immediately killed his former boss because he was too greedy. Hisu also did this so that he could control the Guam region and become a more respected figure. After killing Mr. Sun, Hisu went straight to Yonggang and returned the drugs he had stolen. He also wanted to invite Yonggang to work together to avenge Ami's death. The next day, Mr. Nam gathered all the gangster bosses in the city of Busan, including Hisu, who had become the ruler of the Guam area. And as usual, Mr. Nam pretended to be nice to everyone, even though he had evil intentions. Here, Mr. Nam gave a gift of herbal medicine to Hisu, because his wound was still not completely healed, And besides Mr. Nam, Yang Gang also gave a very special gift, and the gift was a gun. Hisu was silent for a moment, then suddenly shot. Everyone was immediately surprised to see Hisu shoot Mr. Nam and Yang Dong. All this time, Mr. Nam was the source of trouble from the territorial struggle, while Yang Dong was the one who had betrayed him. Hisu also intended to slaughter everyone there, but one of Mr. Nam's right-hand men had another proposal, where they will all become an alliance and will not betray each other. That person then took a knife and immediately slit Mr. Nam's throat and finished off his loyal henchman as a symbol that he would side with Hisu. After witnessing the massacre, Hisu shoots Chio Jin to death in retaliation for Ammi's death. Since this massacre incident, all gangster bosses have become reluctant and afraid of Hisu. Whereas in the past, Hisu was just an ordinary subordinate who was used by his boss. But now he is the ruler of the city. But even though he has everything, Hisu still feels sad because he has lost the two most precious people in his life. Then the movie ended.